Welcome to C# for Crestron programming. In this tutorial, we will explore what a constructor is, how it is used within C# programming, what are the variations of constructors, why should we understand about constructors, finally demonstrate the theoretical concepts of a console application within the .NET platform. Remember, the .NET refers to a software platform to develop various applications like desktop applications, web applications, mobile applications, Crestron control system applications. The constructor is a method that is called when an instance of a class is created. It is used to put the object into an early state to initialize some of the fields and variables within the class. We know from the class definition from previous tutorials that the class has various members such as fields, variables, methods, constructors. Furthermore, a constructor is also defined to be a special method presented under a class responsible for initializing the variables of that class. The name of the constructor is exactly the same name as the class itself, and the constructor is a non-value returning method. Each class requires a constructor if we want to create the instances of that class. It is our job, as a programmer, to create a constructor under a class. If we don't do so, then a default parameterless constructor is created implicitly for us by the compiler. Yes, there are implicitly and explicitly defined constructors and static member constructors. Static member constructors will initialize static members of the type defined. The nice thing about this is that if we start our project as Crestron control system, the template provides us the explicitly defined constructor. See right here underneath the class called control system. However, for this tutorial, we will explain the concept in console.app within .NET Platform, since not everyone has a 4 series processor to test. Okay, let's start a console application within our Visual Studio 2019 community version. Notice as soon as we started our console application, we have a class created for us. It is called Class Program. Where is the constructor? Did we define it yet? No, not yet, but it will be implicitly created for us if we forget to do so. Now you might be wondering, if we do not define a constructor, can we still create a new class? Or can we instantiate a new class? The answer is yes. That means any variables we define under the class will have default values. For instance, all numeric values will be 0, all string values will be null, all Boolean values will be false, etc. Let's see if this is true or not. Let's test this concept. Okay, within our default class program, let's define a few variables with different types and then output to console window. So integer I, string s, and bool b. Remember the characters I, s, and b are just variables, meaning allocating some memory location for those data types. First, let's instantiate a new instance of this class. Now, let's call these within console.writeLine method one by one. Also, define some static text to indicate what are the default for these types we defined. Look at the result. All default values. Just a reminder to us that within console.WriteLine method, we put some static text in quotes to indicate what value is being displayed, and we concatenate it with a plus sign. And used variable name object with dot notation to call each type. Alright, as you can see, even though we did not assign any values to the variables, when we called these variables within our console.WriteLine, the values came through the constructor that is implicitly defined for us by the compiler, and the values of each data type is default value. Let us expand this topic to define another class example within our Solution Explorer without starting another project. Let's go to our Solution Explorer on the right here, and let's select our project name. Right mouse click, and then Add, and add New Class, or shortcut key Shift-Alt-C, and add class. Then right mouse click and rename our class to something that makes sense to us instead of the default name class1.cs. Why don't we call it class 2? We could leave it as class 1 if we wanted to. The reason we are changing it is to illustrate the fact that you can change the class name. Once we add the new class, now we have two classes. We can toggle between the two, or we can even change the orientation by dragging right or left, depending on how we like it. Within our class 2, let's define the constructor template with a commented out line so you can guide yourself. Explicit constructor template, modifier, name, parameter list. Okay, we already partially defined the constructor. Now we follow the constructor template modified to be public class 2, open and close parenthesis, then open and close curly braces. We display a message with console.WriteLine method, something like constructor call to action. Now let's define our main method. Instead of typing, let's just copy from the program.cs file. Within main, let's instantiate or create a new instance of this class object to be class 2 obj equals new class 2 open paren close paren. Let's define console.readLine open close parenthesis to read the next line of characters from the input stream. So, whenever we create an instance of a class, there will be a call to the constructor. If we want to run the class 2 program, we highlight the project name under Solution Explorer, then right mouse click, and then select Properties. Under the Startup object, we select Constructor Demo.Class2. Then we run our project by the Play button up here, or shortcut key Control F5. In this tutorial, we introduced constructors and why they are very important to understand. We also learned that a constructor's main job is to put the object into early state to initialize the fields within the class. We demonstrated what an implicit constructor is and what an explicit constructor is. We explored what happens when we do not declare a constructor, and the compiler implicitly defines the constructor for us. We also learned that the implicitly defined constructor will initialize fields, variables, to default values. We will learn more about constructors in future tutorials. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.